Hi everyone, my name's DIABETOR, and to celebrate today's solar eclipse, I made a build that I'm calling the Eclipse CRUSADER. This build makes use of the Eclipse Shotel, a curved sword that does holy damage, and relies on multi-hit buffs to get some pretty good damage. When used correctly, this build will absolutely shred pretty much any enemy you use it on. And to fully immerse myself in the build, I even edited it during the eclipse. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. It really helps my channel grow. First, I'm going to walk you through the build, including the stats, weapons, armor, talismans, etc. And then we're going to do a showcase where I'll talk about the build and my experience using it, and what I thought were its advantages and disadvantages. First, let's look at the stats. You'll see that I have this build set to level 125 with max level weapons. I chose 125 because it's the quote-unquote meta level for PvP, but you can take this build to any level you want. I just like to personally stop at 125 because I think it's a good number for your builds. But anyway, the important parts of it are that we have 60 Vigor, 30 Dexterity, and 50 Faith. That'll give us not only a ton of health so that we don't die to the bosses when they hit us. Vigor's really important. Check out my video that I just made about Vigor if you want to learn more about that. But also, the 30 Dexterity and the 50 Faith will ensure that we get pretty optimal stats for the Eclipse Shotel. In addition to that, since I had some points left over, I brought Mind up to 15 because we're going to be using a bunch of buffs in this build, so it's important to have at least a little bit of FP. And I brought Endurance up to 19 so that I could carry all the weapons, talismans, and armor and remain in medium load. We have just enough equip load that there's like 1 or 2 pounds of wiggle room in case you want to mess around with the weapons or the armor or the talismans or whatever, but we're pretty close to the threshold between heavy load and medium load. So if you decide that you want to be able to carry more stuff, then you can bring Endurance up a little bit more. I recommend having 60 Vigor because it's just a good, solid number, a good amount of health to have, and make sure that you don't die to endgame bosses in 2 hits. But in the event that you decide you don't need that Vigor and you would rather do some more damage, you can bring Vigor down to 40, and then you're going to want to bring Dexterity up to 50 first, and then after that focus on Faith, which will increase the holy damage of the Shotel. So if you have stats left over, it's 50 Faith, then 50 Dexterity, and then keep putting points into Faith. Now let's look at the gear that we're going to be using. Obviously, our primary weapon is going to be the Eclipse Shotel, which you can acquire at Castle Sol in the mountaintops of the Giants. We're going to pair that with the Sacred Falchion, which will give us the highest holy damage. You can easily get a Falchion by killing demi-humans anywhere on the map. And we're going to cast our spells using the Godslayer's Seal from Stormveil Castle. We choose that one specifically because it'll give us the highest incant scaling with our faith level. For our talismans, we're going to use the Claw Talisman to increase the damage of our jump attacks. We're going to use the Ritual Sword Talisman to increase all the damage we do when we're at max health. We're going to use Millicent's Prosthesis, which increases our dexterity by 5 and also gives us a buff on multi-hits, which I'll talk about later. And we're going to be using either the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia or the Winged Sword Insignia, whichever one you have, preferably the Rotten one, which will stack with Millicent's Prosthesis and also provides a multi-hit buff. For armor, I chose the Mausoleum Knight set, which goes with the Eclipse Shotel. The Mausoleum Knights are devoted to the Eclipse, so it goes with the Eclipse Shotel. But it doesn't come with a helmet because they cut their heads off, so I chose the Great Helm because it's just a cool helmet, and it gives you that Crusader look, which is important for the Eclipse Crusader. And for the gauntlets, I decided to go with the Briar Gauntlets. They make you do damage when you roll into an enemy, and it's only like 1 point of damage, it's not much, but it prevents the enemy's poise from regenerating, which can be really helpful. For spells, I decided to keep it pretty simple, and I just stuck with Golden Vow and Howl of Shabriri, both of which are buffs that'll increase our damage. You'll also see that I have Death Lightning equipped because it kind of goes with the Eclipse Shotel's Deathblight buildup. And I also went with Flame of the Fell God because that orb is kind of supposed to represent the sun, and so I thought that there was kind of a meme there, but I didn't really end up using them. So you can add whatever spells you want to this, preferably ones that do holy damage, but there's not that many great spells that do holy damage, so, it's really up to your personal preference. I personally am not a big fan of using magic in this game, so it's really up to you. And finally, for the crystal tiers in our Wondrous Physic, I decided to go with the Holy Shrouding tier, because our focus is holy damage, and that increases all holy damage that we do, so that one's kind of a no-brainer. And I went with the Thorny Crack tier, which is also a multi-hit buff that stacks with both Winged Sword Insignia and Millicent's Prosthesis. Finally, I'm going to say this one's kind of optional because it doesn't really fit with the theme of the build, but Freezing Pots are really good, and you're going to see me use them in a couple of the clips. When you hit an enemy with Frostbite, not only does it take off a chunk of their health as damage, but also it gives them a debuff that makes them take 20% more damage from all attacks that you do for like 30 seconds. So Frostbite is really strong because of that, and you're going to see the fucking pretty nuts damage that I get against like Loretta later on, which you probably saw in the opening intro clips. But yeah. So that's it for the build guide, and now let's get into the showcase so I can show you just how strong this weapon can be. At the time of recording this audio clip, it's currently 3:31 p.m. And I just came back inside from looking at the Eclipse, and it is pretty fucking cool, dude. I gotta say, that's some cool shit. So yeah. But anyway, so our buffing procedure before the fight is we drink the Wondrous Physic, then we cast Golden Vow, then we cast Howl of Shabriri, then we switch to the Falchion and two-hand it and cast Shared Order, which I forgot to say, but I included a picture of in the build guide. We cast Shared Order because that actually buffs all the damage that we do. I think it's bugged or something, but that's how you get like really high damage numbers with any build, really. Like they all rely on something like Shared Order or something like that. So yeah, we cast Shared Order on the Falchion, and then we go back to one-handing both the Falchion and the Eclipse Shotel, and we use the fucking Death Flare on the Shotel to buff it. And then we can go into the boss fight. I wasn't using the Claw Talisman here, and I also wasn't using Frostbite, as you can see, so my damage isn't as amazing as it could be, but it's definitely pretty good. So you're going to see here, when I open up the thing, I was using Shard of Alexander here because my initial idea was to try to get Death Flare to do a bunch of damage by stacking up the multi-hit bonus, because, you know, it increases all damage you do once you stack up those multi-hit bonuses from Winged Sword, Millicent's, and the Thorny tier. So my idea was that I would stack all those up and then hit the boss with Death Flare. But I couldn't really get it to work consistently because Death Flare kind of takes forever to cast, and the multi-hit buff goes down after like 3 seconds or something. So it didn't really work out, and it doesn't do all that much damage anyway. So that's why I decided to switch over to Claw Talisman and make this focus on jump attacks, because that's also the fastest way to proc the multi-hit buff. And you can see here, I had frostbitten this fucking Godskin Apostle, and I was shredding him with those jump attacks and shit. Here, I was just in the Yellow Onyx Tunnel, just looking for shit to fight so I could get footage, and I decided to fight this Onyx Lord, and I thought something kind of amusing happened. So, you know, I'm fighting him, we're trading blows. That's like, alright, fuck you, Onyx Lord. That's like, oh, he's one hit, and he's gonna do his meteor attack. And so I was like, aha, the Eclipse, motherfucker! And then he said, nah, the Eclipse is gonna get swallowed by the black hole. But then I came back, and I killed him, because I can't let the sun and the moon both be swallowed by the void. So I had to put him in his fucking place. So then I went to the Haligtree and I decided to fight Loretta. And this is the first clip where I switched over to the Claw Talisman. And you're going to see the first thing I do after, buffing and starting the fight is I hit her with a couple frost pots to frostbite her. And I was really surprised by how much damage this does here. Like, this was the fight that I did where I was like, maybe this weapon doesn't have to suck that bad. Because I'm not going to lie, the internally this video is called Eclipse Shotel meme build, because it kind of sucks. But I don't know. I mean, that wasn't so bad. And this is recorded on New Game Plus, or New Game Plus 2. It's one of those. So, she has more health and shit. All the bosses do. So, I don't know. Maybe this thing's not so bad. This clip I like because something about the Shotel is that it gets shield chip. So you can see, even though she was blocking, I still did a pretty good amount of damage through her shield. And I tried to show it here with this Crucible Knight too, but he wouldn't fucking block. But yeah, so Shotels, there's the Eclipse Shotel, there's the regular Shotel, which is a really bad weapon. Definitely don't use that one. And then there's things like the Vulgar Militia Sickle, the Scythe. There's a few weapons that get shield chip. And so it's like, because the blade is curved, it can go around the shield. And so like 40% of its damage will go through an enemy's block, regardless of their absorption that they have on their shield. So it's kind of a niche thing in like PvE, because there's really not all that many enemies that block. Like you saw there, I did an okay amount of damage instead of like barely anything. But yeah, so it's kind of a really niche thing in PvE because not all that enemies consistently block, but it's something that can come in handy, and it's something to consider when choosing a weapon. I wouldn't use the Eclipse Shotel for its shield chip. I would go with something like a Scythe or like the Lucerne or something. But it's definitely something that can come in handy at some point if you're going to be using this weapon anyway. So that concludes this short guide. I hope you found it interesting. Try it out for yourself. I had a lot more fun with this than I thought I would. I'm not really much of a holy damage kind of guy, and the Eclipse Shotel is just kind of a crappy weapon. But with the right setup, as you can see, it can be pretty strong. I only tried it against a few bosses. Obviously its performance is going to suffer against endgame bosses like Godfrey and Radagon and Malekith, because they have higher holy resistance. But since you have the faith, I would recommend an alternative like getting dual Flame Art Falchions, for example, or you can get dual Magma Blades or something like that, because those do fire damage and scale with faith, and so you'll be doing plenty of damage with them even on this build. And yeah, because those endgame bosses, especially like Radagon, they're weaker to fire than to holy damage, so that's what the Flame Art affinity is for. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Stick around for more content. I have a couple build guides coming up. I have a couple boss guides coming up. I've got a plan. I've got a list of 20 or 30 fucking videos that I'm in the process of making. I just need to stop procrastinating and actually do them. But yeah, so leave a like, consider subscribing, leave any comments you have down below about questions or feedback or suggestions. My name is DIABETOR, and I will catch you. Oh, and also, the eclipse today was pretty fucking cool. I hope you saw it, because I did. I was thankful that my sister had an extra spare of, or a spare pair of eclipse glasses so that I could actually see it without going blind. And yeah, that was pretty cool. Anyway, my name's DIABETOR, and I will catch you later.